Hey, welcome back. We're on the floor of CPAC 2022. We're having our conservative conversations here on the grounds. And I'm with my friend Lisa Daftari with the Foreign Desk. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Freedom Center.
Thank you. Thank you for all your wonderful work.
Well, I certainly appreciate all that you're doing. You cover things on an international level, right? Obviously, there's a crisis right now in Ukraine, a sovereign nation being invaded by Russia. But here in the United States, we're seeing a lot of things happening here as well. We have a lot of parents who engage with the Freedom Center. They're concerned about their child's education. They're concerned about freedom in this country. They're concerned about what's happening at the southern border, but they're also concerned about wokeism. I just want to see, what are some things that you're observing, some things that you guys are covering right now?
Yeah, it's wonderful that you're called the Freedom Center, because I don't think the word freedom has ever had such a profound and deep meaning and impact on the families that I'm seeing, the American families. And again, of course, my platform, we cover Afghanistan and Syria and Iran and Ukraine. But when there's so much chaos going on here in the United States, you can't expect people to think outside of what's going on with their own families, their children. So we've been actually doing a lot of coverage on the moms who are driving this fight for freedom, looking at their kids, wishing and wanting better for their kids, not wanting, the system to dictate what freedom should mean for us, but to actually fight for that freedom and take back that power ourselves.
Yeah, I just think about the kitchen table issues, right? More and more today, people are concerned about what's happening in their own backyard, what's happening at their children's schools or the clubs that are happening after school, figuring out, seeing what's happening on their online activity, like with social media and everything else. And I have moms that are approaching me all the time and they're really concerned about this. And they're even concerned about this in religious circles and Christian circles as well, that it seems as though things are not just out there, thousands, hundreds of thousands of miles away or whatever, thousands of miles away in another part of the world, but it's right here in their own backyard. And they're coming out and standing up against it and saying, absolutely not, my kids are not going to be the guinea pigs of the woke left.
Right, and half this country, maybe less at this point, because I think a lot of people are waking up to how far this wokeism will go and what it means for their family, right? So in theory, people can say, yes, I want this and I want to stand behind this movement, all the intersectionality that we speak of, right? So if you want to be that tolerant, bleeding heart, then you have to subscribe to all of these different things, including LGBTQ, transgender, BLM. And as the seams are becoming undone on a lot of these movements, people are becoming more aware of how damaging this is for their families. So you have, that movement that's trying to dismantle. So it's trying to dismantle the family unit. It's trying to dismantle what traditional schooling is. It's trying to dismantle the definition of gender. It's trying to dismantle the definition of marriage. Dismantle, while you and I are trying to teach our kids to build and build and build.
Right.
And we want to use the confines of religion. We want to use the confines of the foundations of this country. We want to use the confines of, humanity and what true tolerance is. And these two things are at odds. So that is the kitchen table conversation. That is what we want to empower our children with. We don't want to be, contradicting what they're learning at school, but that's where we've come to. And I think parents are in a position to say, we're the real teachers here, and we're not going to be undermined by the system. And while there is such a push to the left and left of left, there's also this pendulum swing that I believe a lot more families are enrolling their children in religious education. They're taking their children to synagogue and church more often to get that, to maintain that sense of tradition for their children as well, to combat what they're learning and seeing everywhere else.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really do, Lisa, believe that we're on the precipice of a huge change in this culture and in society. And I don't mean that in a negative way. A lot of times, when we look at the news and we see what's going on, we're saying, look, it looks like we're losing everywhere. But this is perhaps, we're on the eve of the greatest opportunity for a conservative movement, a reawakening, right, of the moral imagination in this country, recognizing that the fundamentals of society have to be based on God, right, on self-government, on freedom, And these ideals and principles have to be rediscovered for the next generation. And I think people are pressing harder into that, not running away from it. And I'll just say, and I'll add this too, that secularism, I think, is probably the largest it's ever been. But I also believe that secularism is the largest it's going to get, meaning that the future is going to be a religious future. The question is, Lisa, what kind of religion are we going to have? Are we going to have a neo-paganism in this country? Or are we going to have something that looks like the Judeo-Christian tradition that we've had for hundreds of years? That seems to be the question right now.
Yeah, it is the question, but you're absolutely right to pinpoint that trend, which is that people are looking for something to lean on, which is outside of what can be offered on TikTok or on YouTube or anywhere else for their children. Not just for their children, but for themselves, right? We're exiting a pandemic, and however you want to define that, it was a hard time for all Americans, and we're still having a hard time climbing out of that. So people usually during a hard time, they want to rely on some greater cause, some greater force, some greater explanation, and that's what they use to climb out, which was why I think there will be a trend towards perhaps that Judeo-Christian narrative that we had when we were children, right? That's what we know.
Yes.
So that's maybe what we will go back to, but that's exactly what we're doing at the Foreign Desk as well. Our platform is the fight for freedom. Regardless of where it is, we are very consistent in our messaging, meaning on the right. We are very consistent on our messaging. People say that the people on the right have lost the narrative. We have lost it to storytelling, and we've lost it to tears, and we've lost it to a whole host of things. But I actually think, at least on the right, we've been consistent in our narrative, and that is the fight for freedom. And we do not waver on that.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's in Afghanistan or in the Ukraine or at our tables at home, it's for our children, at the school board meeting, and we hope to empower others. You and I have platforms where we can tell others to go out, be strong, and there's so many people that don't want to identify as Republican for fear of backlash, particularly in blue cities, right?
Yeah.
I live in Los Angeles. I see so many people that agree with a lot of the things we're talking about right now, but they cannot identify with a party other than the Democrat Party. And for that reason, I think that as we move forward into this next chapter, like you said, I think we're going to see a lot of positive changes. We're going to see a lot of people coming together, agreeing on many of these issues, because when it comes to their children, when it comes to their schooling, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to putting bread on the table, they will agree that this is the way forward for this country.
Yes, very well said. Lisa Daftari with the Foreign Desk. Thank you so much for joining us.
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for all your wonderful work.